Today, we're going to focus on the iPod mini. Why? Well, it's obvious. Because the iPod mini is the most popular MP3 player in the world. We're going to replace it with something new. You ever wonder what this pocket's for? I've always wondered that. Well, now we know, because this is the new iPod Nano.
Successor to the Mini, the iPod Nano was released to the public on September 7th, 2005, and it created a big impact to the iPod lineup. This video marks the 3-year anniversary of the discontinuation of the Nano and Shuffle line back in July 27th, 2017, only 2 months before the iPhone X was announced later in September. Before we take a look back on the Nano lineup, we need to go back a little bit further and see what the iPod lineup looked like before. And before we do, I will just say that while the Shuffle was discontinued on the same day, it's in a different lineup of its own, and it deserves another video dedicated to it in the future. The newest iPod prior to the release of the Nano was the 4th generation. This was the last iPod to have a monochrome display, and eventually, all models were dropped in favor for a color display, otherwise known as the iPod Photo at the time. Still, this general shape and form factor was essentially the same for the first 4 generations. There were some significant differences with each model, but every iPod was basically just a stainless steel housing with a white plastic faceplate. They had the iconic Apple Touch, but from a quick glance, they basically looked the same. Black faceplates weren't even a thing until the 5th generation. Variety was relatively slim. There was, however, the iPod mini. Kind of an overlooked iPod looking back, but this thing was a success. It was smaller, offered colors, and it had its own unique anodized aluminum housing. For the first time, this iPod was more personalized. And with its accessories, like the lanyard, clip, or its specific dock, it was made to target a large audience, and to those who really hadn't used an iPod before. Retailers also had a difficult time keeping the Mini in stock due to how vastly popular it was. The Mini had 2 generations, and honestly, apart from some internal changes such as maximum capacity storage, and the 2nd generation having a color-matched text on the click wheel, they are essentially the same. The Mini was never intended to last forever since it did use micro drives, which is an actual hard drive but the size of a compact flash card. It's extremely crazy to think that it was cheaper to create a miniature hard drive rather than have flash storage at the time, but in the end, flash storage won. Eventually, after only a year and a half on the market and 2 generations into the lineup, the Mini was discontinued the same day that the Nano was announced. That brings us now to the Nano, which when compared to the Mini, was now in a proper lineup of its own. The Mini felt like a continuation of the core iPod models, and while it was quite different, it still resembled the main models more than being a separate device. The Nano was revolutionary at the time, and while there were other flash storage-based devices, none had the simplicity that the Nano had. Apple always focuses on the user experience of their devices, and the Nano was designed with that mindset. It was the smallest iPod at the time, giving it the advantage of being convenient, while still having a high-quality feel just like the other larger iPods. Due to the different designs of the Nano lineup, I will go over them by grouping them based on design and release year. The first group consists of the 1st and 2nd generation models. They share many similarities, and the main differences are the design languages used. The very first model is essentially a shrunken down 5th generation before it even existed, with a stainless steel housing and the iconic faceplate. It defines what a Nano is, a small compact iPod. The 2nd generation Nano is grouped with the 1st because apart from some minor internal changes and a new anodized housing, it's very reminiscent of the Mini predecessor. The main changes were the new colors brought by the aluminum housing, a brighter screen, and a longer battery life. Otherwise, it didn't bring much new in terms of features. When the Nano was released, Apple sold 1 million units in just 17 days of it being released. However, it didn't come without problems. Early in its lifespan, many users reported that their Nano scratched way too easily, even with minimal usage, and eventually, this resulted in a lawsuit against Apple. It also took 5 years for the customers to get a settlement check. The check ended up being only $37.50, a strange number, and certainly less than what the iPod costs, but this was more than initially believed. In the end, the consumers technically won with the settlement check, but at this point, the 6th generation Nano would be released later in 2010, and they didn't lose much from it. This might have also resulted in the change to aluminum for the housings. The 3rd generation Nano deserves to be in its own group. It was unique in its own way and brought some interesting features. First off, the stainless steel housing returned, but it was also the last time an iPod Nano would have it. It also left the vertical size for a new wider format. It had features like cover flow, a new interface, and playback support for videos, along with support for iPod games. It had a lot of new features that would follow with later models, but was also the only iPod Nano to look like a miniature iPod Classic. The 4th and 5th generations are the results of taking the original model and adding as many features as possible. The screen is similar to the 3rd generation, but is now vertical, and full aluminum housings returned. The highlights for the 4th generation are an updated GUI, an accelerometer for extra features like detecting how to display cover flow or enhanced gameplay like on the iPhone or iPod Touch. The 5th generation built up on the previous model and added new things like an FM radio, a larger display, a camera, which is as good as it sounds, an accelerometer, and the aluminum now had a gloss-like finish. The last 2 models were quite similar as they ditched the click wheel in favor for a touchscreen display. The 6th generation is one of the most unique models as it has elements from the Shuffle with the clip design, but also with the iPod Touch with the touchscreen. It has a set of built-in apps which can't be deleted, but also new ones can't be added since the system on a chip still has not been exploited, and the same goes for the 7th generation. The 7th generation is longer and is based on the 6th generation model, but now has circular apps instead of the standard round square ones. And it also has a small home button. It seems strange, but in a way, it differentiates the iPod Nano lineup from standard iOS. Plus, it's the only non-iPod Touch to have Bluetooth built in. And it's the thinnest Nano made, just slightly thicker than the headphone jack. It's also the first and only Nano to have the Lightning connector. Every other model uses the good old 30-pin connector. That brings us to now. The Nano lineup was last updated in 2012, and in 2015, new colors did come out for the 7th generation, but that was the last time there would be a significant update to the lineup. There were also no internal updates to the iPod. Much like the iPod Classic being discontinued due to a reduction in market share, the Nano and the Shuffle had a market share that was growing less and less until eventually Apple decided it wasn't worth it to keep it around. The Apple Watch is essentially the successor to the Nano lineup, and they both serve similar functions. While the Nano lineup may have been discontinued, there are still many around, and while the iPod Touch is the only remaining iPod lineup left, the iPod community is slowly growing, and many still use them. Using an iPhone may be more convenient, but the iPod, especially the Nano models, have a certain charm, and the various designs add to their appeal since each generation is unique in its own way. I hope you guys enjoyed this retrospective look back on the Nano lineup. Someday, I might do one for the Shuffle models as well. And I know that there are many more points about the Nano that I haven't mentioned, but that would be because this video would end up being extremely long. Someday, I also plan on making dedicated videos for each model since they all deserve to have their own video. That pretty much wraps up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and check out the Discord and the subreddit in the description below. Be sure to stick around for more, and thanks for watching.